purpose to the fact that the multiple murders, like I mean, rarely went a week without shooting at or killing our tipuna, have gone undiscussed with Cook. There's a reason behind why the history is presented the way that it is, and it's got very little to do with an accurate recounting of events and everything to do with maintaining the house of the coloniser. So when we talk about colonisation as a structure, just like any structure, if you see a house that hasn't been lived in and it just starts to fall apart all by itself with time. So you need purposeful acts of maintenance. And education is one of those purposeful acts of maintenance to maintain that structure. Statues are purposeful acts of maintenance to maintain that structure. Who gets to be on our currency? Who gets to have their place, their version of a place name remembered? The removal of ancestral place names and the replacement with colonial place names, all of these things communicate to us with every waking moment, from the moment we open our eyes in the morning until we go to sleep, and then in our dreams too, if we're unlucky enough. All of those things reiterate to us who sits at the centre of our world. And so when we are embarking upon this idea of remembering, talking about remembering, and the placement in education and history, there's an idea around, what's ethical to remember? What is ethical remembering right now? There's a lot of different ways for us to consider what's ethical. One is who has had the preponderance of the version of, whose version has held the platform for the vast majority of the time up until now. We've had a whole lot of a particular version of history and very little. So we could probably hear a little bit less. We can deal with a little bit less of that version and hear a little bit more of this version. It's not an even playing field that we're starting off on. And so this whole idea that you tell your truth and I'll tell my truth and we'll eat scones and it's going to be great. That's based on this false premise that it's that we're starting off on an equal playing field. We're not. We actually have to do a whole lot of unlearning of mistruth to get to any kind of a even playing field. So there's a lot of unlearning that has to happen with the history curriculum. And then the other part of it is, what do we want history to do? What do we want our rememberings to do? Do we want it to hold that structure in place? Or do we want to move towards a just future? Mm-hmm. Do we just want each other's sides, of the story? Or do we want justice? Mm-hmm. And so, if I'm looking at you and I've just told you, and this happened, to one of our sisters, Carlo, the other day. She was talking on the radio, and she was talking about how her tipuna, and we were talking, the Tongan tipuna, who had 12 dozen lashes, like even by the standards of the time, that was illegal. And that was illegal in the Navy, even by the standards of the time, with the cat of nine tails. And flesh being cut from their bones, and you can hear her voice is thick and heavy. And the person that she's talking to goes, there's that version and then there's our version. It's like, how is that an ethical response? If I'm going to talk to you about the murder of Tipuna and you want to go, yeah, but he also did some great maps. There's an ethical aspect to that story to be retelling and to remember, and then there's one part of that story that is going to move us to a space of justice, the remembering of it, and then there's another that's going to perpetuate the injustice. So all of these things, are really important for us, and just thank you for raising some of those points around, what is this going to look like for us in the future? Because it's not just a case of getting the textbooks right. This is history is about moving us to a space of justice as a nation. And so, I hope that that's certainly something that's going to be covered. It's going to need us. It's not going to happen. You look at the Tuia Mātauranga curriculum, that is a testament to the fact that it's not going to happen by virtue of this government.
I think one thing I wanted to add is, after Tahapana was talking about, narratives of migration and narratives of indigeneity, we have those in Hawaii as well. And what I've always found in looking back at whether it's old newspaper texts that were written in Hawaiian or old mo'olelo, old stories, is that our kupuna never had a conflict between the two. They knew when to emphasize stories of true indigeneity as like coming from the earth. Our ancestor Papatūānuku getting together with Wakia, birthing the islands, and then us coming from that. We have those narratives. And then we have narratives of travel as well. But they were never in conflict. We knew, just like all genealogies, they're political and they're strategic. Today I'm going to emphasize this. We do that with our own families, right? I'm going to emphasize this line today because it's going to get me into this space. And I'm going to strategically hide that one. It's the same thing. But now, like the state of Hawaii, and even you can see it here in Tuia 250, they want to emphasize your migration to then pretend that we're all the same. We all came here on a boat, right? You're not from here, so you're not truly indigenous. But we have both those narratives for a reason, because we are both rooted and routed, and we never had a conflict. It's the settler colonial mentality that makes you have to be one identity and strategically the identity that they can get the most out of. So yeah, I just wanted to add that on, that I'm so glad you brought that up, because what is missing is this narrative of indigeneity, of coming from the whenua, that is super important, and that has to be part of the curriculum and the teaching of history. So
I just wanted to say something around the framing of Polynesia, and it has become apparent to me, especially through the voyaging mahi that I do, is that there's no such thing as Polynesia, and there's no such thing as Micronesia, and there's no such thing as Melanesia. And what I mean by that, and so, it can be hard for us who have traditionally made, well not traditionally, but in the recent years called ourselves Polynesian or Melanesian or Micronesian, but that it's a label that has been used to divide us, and it's something that is totally not true. And also around, especially in the space that we are now, when we're talking about wakahaurua, sailing, voyaging canoes, and navigation. And what's really sad for me is that when we talk about our exploits in Aotearoa and Hawaii since the 70s, which is when voyaging really had a renaissance period from then until now, is that in this part of the Pacific, we've centered it around Polynesian voyaging, yet the very man who gifted again to us this mātauranga navigation won't fit in the narrative of Polynesia. So it's really sad to see that we're talking about Polynesian navigation, yet the man who gave it to us can't even be considered part of that whānau. That the whānau that we sailed with from Fiji aren't a part of that. That all the whānau around Micronesia, Melanesia, and elsewhere that are part of us aren't included in our own stories when we talk about this. So I challenge everyone here who identifies in one of those groups to expand and think about who are the cousins that you've been leaving out of your kōrero when you talk about who we are in the Pacific, as Pacific Islanders or as people of the Pacific. Te Moana. Kia ora.
So sorry, I just wanted to add to that, because in Hawaii, Of course, we acknowledge Papa Mau as coming from Sarawal and helping us, but what's really problematic about our relationships with Micronesians, and I use that term really broadly because it's an umbrella term that assumes that they're a homogenous group, right? Is that we don't often think about our very tense relationships with them. So we have to challenge ourselves as Pacific Islanders to not just say all of Micronesia is represented by Mau Piailug, and also say, okay, what else is happening there, right? We have a huge migration of Micronesians coming to Hawaii, and a lot of people in Hawaii, because of the dominant narratives, don't understand why they're there. Why are they there? Well, why are they there? Because the United States has militarized the Micronesia and has gone to places like the Marshall Islands and bombed the crap out of it. So they have to come to Hawaii, but we, as residents in Hawaii, don't know that because we're not taught that history. So then there's all this racial tension. We love Papa Mau, but please don't come and take our land, all you Marshallese and you know, Koshraians and Pohnpeians. And I'm real about that ethnic tension because it's something that we have to be dealing with in Hawaii. And we cannot hide all of our racism in Hawaii by strategically going, but we love Papa Mau. So it's not only acknowledging our relationships in the Pacific, but also acknowledging the role that settler colonialism, militarism has had on the way that we relate to each other. Because our relationship between Micronesians, and again I'm using that term really broadly, is because of the way that the United States, the settler colonial power, has damaged their land and their people, and then hid that history from us. So it's really about finding ways back to each other that are not always facilitated by the settler colonial state. So it takes looking at Papa Mau and going, oh, he did something amazing. What else can I learn about his people? What else can I learn about the island group that he comes from? What else can I learn about the struggles that they're going through? And not painting the Pacific with this, you know, beautiful brush that we're all in this together. I mean, we are all in the same moana, but we have to really tease apart those relationships, be real about the tensions, because that's the only way we're going to move forward. So.
And again, as well. But I mean, again, this again brings me back to everything from this idea of, you know, the lines, Polynesia, that's like Melanesia, these straight angular lines that they drew across our moana to categorize that group separately to this group, separately to this group. You know, and the way and the anthropological way in which that has been perpetuated as well, this separation, and it just, you know, I just wanted to support and total everything that you had said there, but because that whole and the drawing of the lines and the borders that separate us as well, all of that again can be traced back or has these connections back to this idea of the doctrine of discovery. International law which gave one particular group or a grouping or an entity the right to be able to define borders, to draw borders, define borders, draw exclusive economic zones, define a high seas area where they will make laws over the high seas area even though it impacts all of the fishery communities in a particular area. All of that comes back to, you know, the law of nations, and the law of nations has its roots in some of these papal bulls and papal laws drafted in the 14th. None of them have been rescinded. They've just been built upon. Many of them, some of them have wound up becoming the foundation of international law that's still being applied to us today. Not just there, but in many other nations, and just, you know, the way in which it, you know, our story, when we talk about these, it's so important for us to talk about this history because it connects us. You know, my story as a Ngāti Porou woman who is really just trying to live